Today I will show you a science fiction film about time, belief, and the boundaries of human understanding. Now, let's dive into this enigmatic tale of the movie The Man from Earth. Spoiler territory ahead. The sun begins to set. John Oldman stands in the driveway next to his pickup truck, loading the back with boxes. The air is still and calm. As John places things in the truck, a person arrives. It's his friend Dan. He steps out of his car and walks over to John. Need help with that box? As Dan finishes helping, other friends start parking on the driveway. They step out and approach John. They gather around the truck. Edith approaches and says, "But John, you're moving so fast. Why the hurry?" Then Edith notices something leaning against the pickup. "Wait, is that a Van Gogh?" she asks. "No, it's not the original. It's just a gift from a friend." Then they all head inside the house. His friends are curious about his sudden decision to give up his academic career, with some teasing him about his ageless appearance. John admits to feeling itchy feet and needing a change, but refuses to reveal much more. A farewell toast is made, and the group continues to chat about archaeology and life in general. Dan spots an artifact, leading to a conversation about its historical significance. As the group enjoys the moment, John becomes reflective and hints at having something important to share. Finally, in a playful tone, he asks, "What if a man from the Upper Paleolithic survived until the present day?" leaving his friends intrigued and puzzled. They consider whether such a person would resemble a caveman or adapt through 140 centuries of human development. Dan argues that anatomically, Cro-Magnons were like modern humans, just less informed. They muse on the potential intelligence and knowledge of someone who lived through all of human history, suggesting he might have astonishing insights. The biologist speculates that longevity might result from perfect cellular regeneration. If such a man had an immune system capable of flawless detoxification and renewal, he might evade aging and decay. The idea intrigues the group. As the conversation shifts, John makes a cryptic remark about having had the chance to sail with Columbus, but deciding against it. The comment leaves the group momentarily stunned, hinting at the possibility that John might be speaking from personal experience. John begins his story asking his friends to imagine it as science fiction. He reveals that he is 14,000 years old, having stopped aging at 35. His voice carries a subtle weariness, reflecting the weight of his secret. He explains that every decade or so, he moves on to avoid suspicion when people notice he doesn't age. His friends react with a mix of amusement and skepticism. Some laugh, joking about his claim, while others treat it as an intellectual game. As John shares vivid memories, like seeing the British Isles before they separated from the mainland, his detailed descriptions begin to unsettle the group. Some listen while others remain doubtful. John recalls leading his prehistoric tribe, being revered as magical, and later feared as cursed. His voice softens as he shares the pain of being cast out, accused of stealing life to stay young. After a brief interruption, the group returns to their discussion. John recounts memories of meeting Van Gogh and working as a pig farmer, describing his life as a journey across vast, changing landscapes. He explains he can't remember where he is from because the landscape is very different from how he remembers it. They ask him why he had to relocate. He says that when people start to notice about him not aging, he has to relocate. Then John tells some of the difficult experiences from the times he had to relocate. The group challenges him further, asking why he reveals this now. His reply is simple yet profound, a whim, a desire to say goodbye as his true self. In private, Sandy confronts John about her feelings. She confesses her love, and though John is fond of her, he warns that his ageless existence would doom any future they might have. But Sandy counters with a pragmatic view. Life offers no guarantees of forever, and she's willing to take what they can share. As John enters the room, Harry swiftly makes a surprise attack. However, John reacts in an instant, taking Harry down to the floor with a quick move. After that, the conversation soon turns to his past, and John begins to recount his experiences through different historical eras. His most significant tale is about meeting Buddha, describing him as the most extraordinary person he's ever encountered. This revelation stirs mixed reactions. Their conversation is interrupted by Will, the group's psychologist, who who arrives at the scene after being informed about John's puzzling claims. Dan acknowledges that proving the story of John is impossible and says that John is either a caveman, a liar, or mentally unstable. The conversation takes a scientific turn, with John recounting his experiences with illnesses over the centuries, including surviving typhoid, yellow fever, smallpox, and even the bubonic plague. His resilience raises eyebrows, especially when he claims he doesn't scar. Despite protests from his friends, John resists the idea of undergoing medical tests, hinting at a mistrust of laboratories and the potential consequences of such exposure. As the group presses him for more details, John discusses his extensive education over centuries, revealing he holds multiple degrees in various disciplines, though he emphasizes that his longevity has not made him omniscient. He reflects on the limitations of knowledge, explaining how even with millennia of experience, one can only be as advanced as their era allows. As they sit in the coach, we'll ask John if he misses someone special in his life, a friend, a colleague, a wife. He says that he had to move on. We'll invite John to reflect on the fact that maybe he was stealing the lives of his fellows in some way. Will continues by reflecting on the fairness of John's condition with respect to others. Make him think about how many people will feel mad or envious about his ability. Then Will gets a little mad, draws a gun, and points it out to John. After this, we'll lower the gun and get out of the house. Everyone feels relieved. Then Harry reveals that Will's wife passed away yesterday. So John goes after Will and apologizes to him. John asks the gun to Will and discovers that it is not loaded. Meanwhile, inside the cabin, his friends discuss what is happening with John. Is he mad? Moments later, with John already in the room, Harry represents a charade with Sandy about the first wedding of John. Then they continue to ask different questions to John about his past. He confesses he met a man in the 1600s that could have his ability. Later, when he is asked about religion, he says, "I don't follow a known religion." However, he doesn't dismiss the existence of God. Then the big question is asked, "Did you ever meet any person from our religious history?" He wants to skip the question, but after some pressure, he confesses he was part of the history of the Bible. He goes on and says the apostles didn't do any real teaching. He says the truth is much more simple. He proposes the New Testament in 100 words or less. Then Edith gets up, vividly mad, and says she wants to go home. She says it is sacrilege. Then Dan talks about how there are dozens of different versions of the New Testament, and Harry makes comments about respecting others' beliefs. Finally, they convince Edith to stay. So John starts to explain that after meeting Buddha and embracing his teachings, he spent 500 years as an Etruscan. With time, he became disillusioned with the violence of the Roman Empire. Seeking to spread Buddha's wisdom in a new form, he ventured to the Near East. However, he was met with Roman opposition. John explains how he survived the crucifixion, using techniques he had learned to block pain and slow his body processes, leading to what his followers perceived as resurrection. As he continues, John critiques how religious figures like Jesus and Buddha have been misinterpreted over time, stating that the core teachings of Christianity align closely with Buddhism. He condemns how organized religions have been corrupted by rituals and political agendas, with ceremonies becoming detached from the original message of love, kindness, and enlightenment. Then Art emphasizes that all events, even those as ancient as the existence of a 14,000-year-old caveman, are part of nature, whether people choose to believe it or not. Later, Will returns ashamed, but he still doesn't believe John. Then John takes Will inside the cabin. Will sits on the couch and asks John when he started to believe he was Jesus, to which John responds, "When did you begin to believe you were a psychiatrist?" Will says he had the feeling after going to medical school and finishing his residency. Will says he didn't find anything unusual as a psychiatrist until he met a caveman who thought he was Jesus. A crazy story coming from an apparent sane person, according to Will. John is questioned about what Jesus would say to those who find it difficult to believe in him. He responds, "Believe in what he tried to teach without the gibberish." Then John takes a box and goes outside with Sandy. After that, Will and the others reflect out loud about the sanity of John. But then they start to talk about the possibility of what John has told about Jesus. John enters the cabin with Sandy, and he sits beside the fireplace. He says that it helps him to feel secure. His friends are completely baffled. They don't know what to think of John. Sandy asks him if he has faith in the future of the race. He responds that it depends on the species' balance with the environment, and that there is time if it is used well. John confesses he was a shaman a few times, so they discuss the meaning of religions. John talks about the difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament. He talks about how the New Testament is a good code of ethics that was embellished by poets and philosophers. Then he explains about how his name John was changed by time until it became Jesus. After those incredible explanations, Harry expresses how everyone is amazed and trapped by John's story. They reach a point where they don't know what to believe. They are shocked. Edith starts to cry. Will says things went too far and that they are very upset. He says that he doesn't believe John is mad, but he doesn't believe in what John says to be true. So he asserts that everything must be a hoax. Will demands John to tell the truth. Then John asks everyone to go out. He says that everything was just a story. Everyone is shocked. Edith cries. His friends are outraged. John explains how they gave him the idea, how Edith saw his fake Van Gogh, how they commented that he never ages. He explains how got the notion and built it from there based on their reactions. But he confesses he took it too far. Dan is so mad at John that he even insults him. Edith confesses she was worried about John, and John admits he was tempted to tell the truth, but he wanted to know if they could refute him. He says a room full of professors specialized in related topics were the perfect audience. Art says he has had enough and leaves. Linda asks John if his last name Ullman is a pun. Then she leaves. Will is worried that John may still need help. Then John takes some things outside the house, and Sandy goes after him. She confronts him and tells him that everyone believed in his confession because they have to, but she knows he will never use people or abuse their goodwill. Moments later, Harry and Edith go outside and start to say goodbye to John. They even reconcile with John and forgive him. Then Dan goes outside. He has a brief talk with John, and Dan says everything is possible. He wishes John good luck and hopes to hear from him in the future. Dan leaves while John and Sandy stay there chatting. John tells her about other pun names he used. John mentions his name was John Thomas Partee when he was teaching in Harvard. Then Will interrupts them and asks him about Boston 60 years ago. Will is enraged. John talks about Will's mom and the pet of the family. They talk about when Will was a child. Then Will falls to the ground. As Dan drives, he sees a police car heading toward the house. Later, a covered body is loaded in the ambulance. A police officer requests John to stay in touch in case there are any questions. Then the officer leaves. Sandy points out that John never saw a grown child die. John goes out and gets in his pickup. The car drives away, but then he stops. Sandy walks to it and gets in the car.